All right. So next up, we're going to be tackling a very important topic, which is energy tariff management, and it's a very important conversation that must be heard, you know, for every property owner and facility manager in the building. And to moderate this panel session, I'll be calling on the group MD and CEO of West Power and Gas Limited, which is the parent company of Eco Electricity Distribution PLC. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not too busy, please make welcome Mrs. Walla Joseph Condotti. Please, a round of applause for her as she walks up to the stage to moderate this interesting panel session. Please, a round of applause. A round of applause for Mrs. Walla Joseph Condotti. Please put your hands together for him as he comes off stage.
Thank you very much, moderator. I'm standing in for Mrs. Walla Joseph. My name is Chima Ochi. I'm the Chief Legal and Regulatory Officer of West Power and Gas Limited, the parent company of Eco Electricity Distribution PLC. It's indeed actually a beautiful event, very memorable one, the REMA conference. Just looking at the tagline, structures beyond buildings, it shows a whole lot of engagement that has to do with ensuring that the community that we live in is run transparently and efficiently. That's what brings us to this particular panel section, which is energy tariff management. So we've seen a whole lot of, should I say, noise on tariff, where we live in. We see a lot of how do we blend the energy that comes from the grid and energy that comes from a solar panel, battery energy systems and all that. And there's a whole lot of force regarding how we can make this energy tariff transparent, how we can make it affordable, and how we can make it even very, very usable for the residents. And this panel section is just here to let us see deeply by dissecting the key indices about energy tariff management. So we're looking at the real world example, real world models. What are the models that we can deploy to our facility managers, our communities, and our environments to see that it works for us? We'll look at the cost recovery models, and also we'll look at practical examples in ensuring that we actually have energy tariff managed properly within our communities. And without much ado, I would be inviting my panelists that would help us do justice to this topic, energy tariff management. So if your hands are not busy, please help me welcome my first panelist, Mr. Chude Osiebu. Chude is the co-founder and CEO of Venco Africa. I believe I'll call him our host. With over 15 years of experience in enterprise technology. He is the idea for Venco emerged from his own experience living in gated community in Port Harcourt. And we're glad to have you, Mr. Chude. Also join me in welcoming my second panelist, Ugwem Eneyo. Ugwem is an engineer, inventor, climate entrepreneur. She founded and served as CEO of Shift Power Solution and Energy Technology company, pioneering IoT-based management systems for distributed energy and smart cities in Africa. Following her Shift's acquisition by Stema Co, she now serves on the board of directors, and she is also the Chief Product and Innovation Officer of the company. Welcome, Uwem. Join me also in welcoming Anthony Osaihe Osamoje. Anthony is the CEO and co-founder of Anthony Roads Facility Management, with over 20 years of leadership experience spanning technology, facility management, and oil and gas. He's a trained in electrical engineering and information technology. He brings a deep understanding of how energy costs and tariff affect operational efficiency. Thank you, Anthony. Please, I want us to be engaging because this is going to be an exciting session. Also join me welcoming Julian Bassi. Julian Bassi is the managing director of Crimson Power a renewable energy company providing solar EPC and power as a service solutions that reduces diesel use and improve power reliability across Nigeria. He has over a decade experience in renewable energy, and he specializes in system design. Julian, welcome. And our finance. Can we help in keeping this steady, please? Yeah. So, and our finance experts in the room, Isaac Ogu. Isaac is the head of infrastructure. So Isaac is the head of infrastructure, finance, and power projects at Sterling Bank PLC. He leads the bank's portfolio in financing large-scale energy and infrastructure transactions across Nigeria. He's had extensive experience in projects and corporate finance. He has been instrumental in structuring bankable solutions across power generation, in fact, all the value chain of the power sector. Welcome, Isaac. So we'll move straight into the panel conversation. Thank you very much, my panelists, for making out the time to join in this robust conversation. I know we have to do with REMA, real estate, our communities, how we manage it. So the way the questions will go in no particular order, but I like starting from my extreme and it dovetail down here, right? So we have all of us looking at our profile. We have wealth of experience in what we do. Ogwem is in the IoT metering space. Have done a lot of work as an inventor. Chude, Venco, helping communities manage their lifestyle, even electricity. And Crimson Power as well, doing a whole lot of Steamaco, Sterling and all that. So from my experience, how have we been able to use our work to ensure that energy tariff is managed efficiently? From my experience, how we contributed to ensuring that energy is managed efficiently. Isaac.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. It's good that you're asking me the question that even the president of Nigeria is bothered about. Everyone wants to know how energy costs can be more affordable. I think that's a challenge that we'll face. If we've not faced it since 1960, at least we'll face it since the unbundling of the power sector, because the whole aim was unbundling would have, the expectation was that it will open up the market, drive in private capital, and then they will have a more market-friendly sector. But we're not there yet. But a lot has happened recently with the passage of the Electricity Act 2023. We are approaching today a more cost-reflective environment. So cost-reflective environment does not translate to affordability because, first of all, the developer, the power producer has to generate sustainable financing. The investor, the lender, has to see a bankable project before we can deploy capital. And then all of us who are consumers, hope. Though my friend there said hope is not a strategy, all of us hope for affordability. I think as we progress, the discussion will guide us there. I'm even sitting down here today from everyone.
Thank you very much. MD Crimson, go ahead.
I hope the mic works this time. Yeah, from my perspective, we live in a society where power is in serious demand. It's very obvious that we all need it, but it's the one thing nobody wants to pay for. And from our perspective as in Crimson Power, we utilize solar solutions to try and bridge that gap between what I would call cheaper means of power or direct access to power, generators, grid, and the non-availability of those. The thing with solar is that you need to invest early. So it's a large-scale investment at the early stage, but then spread across multiple years. That is when you can get value out of it in terms of the tariff, right? Now, the trouble is all of the metrics that go before that, the investment, the calculation, the engineering, all of that costs money. And as I said earlier, most people are not willing to pay. But I think we need to actually start recognizing that to get to that utopia of 24/7 power, we need to be willing to pay our part as consumers. That is, to pay for the power. Yes, it will be managed as best as possible, transparency and all of that. Not everybody wants to just take off and become gazillionaire by exploiting others. But at the same time, investments should be paid for. Nobody is a charity organization. So I think the balance lies in our hands. We need to just figure out how to continue managing that situation.
Thank you very much. Anthony?
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll be speaking from the angle of running a facility management company and my experience in information technology. So one of the things we should know is that energy tariffs are dynamic. They can't be fixed. And I'm going to be speaking to communities, especially estates, apartments, even those that run commercial properties. So energy tariffs are dynamic. You need to be able to know when to change your tariff. And that should be informed by gathering enough data. And also for different communities, right? What works in community A does not work in community B because you have to look into that community from the different panelists that have spoken. You need to look into a certain, if it's an estate or a community, and look at what works best for them. You can't say because, oh, this particular estate, right, is on 350 per units, we should also do this estate the same way. You need to look at the dynamics in those estates. Some estates we say, oh, and the kind of metering also informs your tariff. Are you using a single tariff meter? Are you using a dual tariff meter? And some estates will want to use PHCN, right? And check meters because especially small estates, right? They don't want to go the dual tariff way because it will not pay them. So based on that, right, you can now begin to say, okay, this is the tariff. This is the workable tariff for the estates. And you can't just arrive at energy tariff, right? You can't just arrive at energy. There are different parameters that you need to look at, the type of generator, or is it a new generator? Is it an old one? What is the occupancy in that particular estate? Is generator running on full load, half load, 3 or 4? So you need to put all these things in place to determine the energy tariff. And after some time, like I said, you'll have been able to gather enough data because some estates that we run, we've been able to gather enough data through most of our estates use Venco anyway. Okay. So we've been able to gather enough data to say, oh, you guys have surplus in your energy accounts, right? We need to review the tariff. The other speakers, they talked about a collaborative way of, so you need to work with those residents and say, oh, you have surplus in your estate because of this data we've gathered. Okay, let's work on the tariff. Let's reduce this. Let's reduce the tariff, or let's look at your fixed charge, or let's reduce your normal energy. So it is dynamic, and we have to take a data-driven approach towards energy tariff management. Thank you.
Okay, so essentially, your circumstance will determine what tariff model you deploy. Chude, your thoughts?
Yes, so for me, I think there are two big things around here. there's data on one hand, there's also culture. I don't think that anyone can solve the problems of energy tariff management in communities without taking those two things into account. So at Venco, we've done a lot of work, so basically, Venco will do anything that estates need them to do. So energy is a big thing for us because communities, energy is a big thing in communities. So is security, so is financial management, and all of that. But energy is probably the biggest thing when you look at it from the lens of spend, right? And one of the things we've noticed is that a lot of communities are laboring under incomplete information when they decide to do tariff, engineer their tariffs or calculate their tariffs. You'll find in many cases, so we onboard, fairly regularly communities onto Venco, and one of the most frequent questions is, what tariff should we charge?
True.
And we're like, I'm sorry, we should not be the ones telling you what tariff you should charge. You should be able to determine that from the data that you get in your community. The type of generator you use is not the same that others use. Your cost of power isn't the same. The setup of your estate isn't the same. So generally, it should be a data-driven view to come up with that, and it should be something that is, revised from time to time, giving the correct inputs. And this is one of the biggest issues that I think many communities have, because they haven't really made the relationship between the inputs and the setup of their community and the tariff. They are constantly getting into trouble with their customers, their consumers, that is the residents. One of the things that we are trying to do at Venco is to shine a torchlight, for lack of a better term, on all the different parameters that will help you to successfully determine tariff. And it's not just in determining tariff, being able to measure those inputs helps you to understand what your ideal energy mix should be, right? So I don't know how many of us have experienced here scenarios where we are bound to charge a higher tariff because, for example, there's an inefficient generator or an oversized generator in the communities where we are, right? So in the community where I lived for a long time, we were using generators that exceeded our capacity by like 4 or 5-fold. And at the time, we didn't know because the government was subsidizing our energy through low diesel costs. But immediately, I don't know if we all remember when diesel costs normalized. And there was a lot of, in fact, I think many of you should remember because a lot of facilities managers were kicked out of the estates that they manage because of that. Because we had been operating in a low price regime, people were willing to pay the cost of energy. But once the cost of diesel aligned, properly, there was a lot of pushback and unrest, in communities. And that is when in my community, for example, we decided to sell the 2 kVA generators we have and buy like a 350 kVA, you understand? And so our costs, come down. So I think there's a lot of lack of knowledge, with respect to the different sources of energy, our energy mix, and how we should make that more efficient. And that is causing oversized problems for the operators of communities. So hopefully one of the things that we'll be able to address here is, those kind of parameters, how to determine, the correct inputs, and then how to disseminate that education so that people know the basis on which to optimize their tariffs, not necessarily reduce, but optimize.
Thank you very much, Uday. Uwem.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually going to pick up on your point on creating the tools to better create tariff management schemes that are data-driven. Shift Power Solutions actually entered the market a decade ago, delivering what we call distributed energy resource management software. That's the technical jargon. Essentially, we were building the network operating center solutions for power as a service companies. So the likes of Daystar and Renuvia, et cetera. And so on that journey over the past decade, we were actually seeing how our customers were looking at the composition of the assets they were delivering and how that informed the tariffs and the contracts they were establishing, oftentimes with commercial facilities. At the time, many of those facilities were banks. And from that insight on how they were creating these very data-driven tariff structures and contracts, we began translating that into how our customers in the community space can similarly use inputs on what type of assets they have, how the communities were developed in order to build more data-driven tariff structures. And I think one of the key things in our products, and I know this is also the case with Venco, when it comes to the metering element for communities, is creating tools within the product that make it easier for facility managers to build cost-reflective schemes. So whether that's base recurring charges, charges that are automatically reflecting people's prorated consumption across the community, costs that's figuring out how to capture common area costs and whatnot. That's a key part. And if what we often see is people are trying to copy and mimic tariff schemes in one community for a development that is quite different and also has quite different user behavior and patterns. So I do really believe that the first part is really understanding and designing a community with the tariff structure in mind and making sure you're implementing the technology that can ensure you can collect on that tariff structure effectively as well.
Thank you very much. So indeed, data is key for any tariff management, and also technology is actually critical for driving that. Thank you so much for your insights. So Mr. Ogu, I would go with you again. Now I want to look back to your closing statement when the first question, when you mentioned cost reflective tariff does not translate to affordability. It's one notion that I still battle with it today, because on the one divide, you have customers saying it must be affordable. But the other side, right, the people that put in the money to build the structures and get it developed, right, they want to recoup their investments. In fact, from my knowledge, I know that the laws allows investors to recoup their investments with a reasonable return. So now, from your experience as a financial expert, what financial models or best models can be recommended, or probably or two that can be put in place to ensure that we balance cost reflective tariffs with affordability?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, when you ask this question, everyone is looking at the bank. And everybody's mind here, everybody's thinking about interest rates. Financing costs is a major component of the ultimate cost that gets to the consumer. And then you have the FX costs, you have the AT, CRC cost, you also have the inefficiency cost, which was just addressed here. All of that feeds into ultimately the tariff. Now, but you know, a project has to be bankable for it to either attract investors or attract lenders or be sustainable over time. And so that feeds into their ability to be operationally efficient. And for that, you also need to be financially efficient. So there are a lot of opportunities today. We're seeing what blended financing, where DFIs are supporting private lenders to help drop cost of funding. We're seeing guarantees. For example, I see projects where support goes to upgrade projects, where you see agencies like MIGA with World Bank provide some form of guarantees. And then I was speaking before with Julian, and I was asking him, why do developers, everybody builds their own independent power producers or residential estates? Everyone has their own generators. Why can't there be some collaboration where there is a pool? And then, because part of your financing cost comes from scale. If you come to me with a request of $1 million, it's not the same. It's not appraised like if it's a little bit higher, because that's how you can assess get into the prime lending range. So that structuring could also, the challenge of financing costs is not just about funding, it's also a portion about structuring. So you look at taking advantage of all these opportunities. And then I see where a lot of developers are carrying this heavy capex, because this is a highly capex intensive environment.
Sure.
Is it possible that some of these capex are taken off your balance sheet, either as a lease to own structure, either the estate owns it and the ultimate consumers is included in their service cost and is paid down over time? Those are some. So, but you know, the whole idea is with the professional sitting there. Me, I'm just a financier. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And indeed, a nice insights regarding balancing it. So, Julian, given your work, right, I see you sit at the intersection of both divide. So you're providing power and also you're managing the communities. So, and what we've seen recently is that there's an exodus of transitioning to solar and hybrid system, yeah, from diesel and all that. So, what frameworks would you recommend in building social acceptance for that transitioning from the diesel generator to a hybrid model?
All right. Thank you for that. Let me first explain the second part that you mentioned, where you said I sit on both divides. So I am currently the president of our Residents Association, one of the newest president. The estate has run for 10 years. We took over the estate, including the power infrastructure. And it was well put together by a team of experts that basically took their personal skills and tried to develop the solution for the estate, and has managed it well so far. From the point of tariffs, it's very difficult because the end consumer is always wanting a cheaper solution. They never want to pay for that cost, right, of power, and also do not understand how power works, right? Because power has been subsidized in our society for so long, we just believe that we're almost entitled to power. Why should it cost 300 naira plus? You know, I should be paying the good old 65 naira. And even that 65 naira that the grid charges on band B is not enough to fund infrastructure development. It's one of the reasons why our national grid is collapsing all the time, and the infrastructure has just never improved. From the renewable point of view, as mentioned earlier, the investment is heavy, right? So you invest into solar particularly, because there are various aspects of renewable. You invest early in the solar solution to reap over time. And if you don't do it at greenfield stage, I believe that that strategy is already wrong, right?
Yeah.
For me, as a power solution provider using solar, I always encourage people, bring us in at the early stage so that we can work with you to figure out what is the path to the right solution. I was speaking to one of the panelists earlier who are developers, and I was saying, we do have a solution for them, but only at the greenfield, because what we notice is that they keep calling us in at the end of the project when we're trying, and then we're just trying to solve for multiple problems that have been created prior to us being part of it. The other panelists talked about bringing the FM into the conceptual stage.
Sure.
I think developers need to bring everyone in, because the community you create, that infrastructure you create at the end of the day is going to be determined by all of the inputs at the very early stage, and that would determine whether the output is worthwhile or becomes a headache for everyone. So, from a renewable perspective, we need to learn to invest early.
Yeah.
Accept that it's a high cost, but
Yeah.
it can be amortized over time.
Yeah.
The finance providers need to understand that it takes longer.
Yeah.
They should stop trying to recoup, which is in 3 years or 2 years, as is tradition here.
Long-term
It
finance.
just doesn't help the whole access to power situation.
Thank you very
Right?
much.
So in Europe, when a solar energy system is financed for 10 years, right? Or even more, 20 years. And then you can put that into your financial model and know, all right, the tariff that is going to be charged to the end consumer is going to be reasonable and, absorbable by the consumer. So some nuggets to take from there. And I hope that those of us listening and are in the space where this could be valuable to you will take some of those information and use it wisely.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I think it's well taken, and I know that a lot of financiers have actually started adjusting to that. Thank you so much, Anthony. So you sit at as a facility manager, right? How do you communicate transparent and efficient costs to your customers or your residents? How do you do that? What frameworks and what models, please? 2 minutes.
Okay. Like I said, and every of the panelists before us have said, right? The way to communicate transparency is to bring all the stakeholders into decision making. So you let them know you're using a data-driven approach. If they want to calculate it themselves, they can also do the calculations themselves. So that's the only way to show transparency. You involve them in the process, and even in some estates, we even tell them you guys can have the accounts, right? The money that is coming from the vending app is going to your own account. You're seeing it. We are paying for PHCN. We are servicing your generator, and we are purchasing diesel. So that's the only way we've been able to manage it by bringing everyone into the picture.
Essentially, bring everybody aboard,
Yes.
get their trust,
Yeah.
and of course, they'll be comfortable with tariff. Thank you very much. Shude. Now,
Okay, so I mean,
no, I have a question for you. All right. Yeah. So, Benko, I know you guys deal with a lot of data, and part of your features, right, is to help manage electricity consumption and all that. How critical is data to ensure that tariff is managed efficiently? And if there are any recommendation or frameworks that you can let the audience know about, it would be nice to hear. Thank you.
I think data is very key. Now, unfortunately, by the time most of us here, maybe except the financier, get into the picture, we are very downstream of the problem. So the mistakes have been made and we are just literally managing, right? But even in that management, there can still be a lot of optimization if we are taking a data-centric approach. One example is around tariffs, for example, is the mismatch. So I don't know, any of us who are facilities managers here, I'm certain that a lot of us who probably don't use Venco have had challenges where we are just not meeting up at the end of the month, right? The collections versus what you need to pay to the grid and pay for diesel doesn't match, and sometimes that can get out of hand up to the point where you are cut off the grid. Now, there's something very simple that can help that, and it's, again, based on data that you have accessible. So a lot of us have actually gone into prepaid metering. So we are doing that right. So we now have meters that are the basis for allocating costs to individual consumers, right? But we don't really have visibility of the bulk supply of energy, right? So for example, you're getting energy in at your transformers or out of your generators. So all we see is the consumption on the individual meters of residents, but we are not collecting the data that matches that aggregate consumption with the supply. So we are all looking at the consumption end, but we are not looking at the supply end. And if we were looking at that, we would very easily see, even before things get to a head, that, hey, we are consuming 200,000 kilowatt hours of energy, every month, but the aggregate of my meters is saying 150, which should then naturally, trigger the question, where is the 50 going, right? So because of that blindness, a lot of us also get into trouble because we are robbing Peter to pay Paul, but at some point, things will get to a head, right? And the solution to that is like really simple. There are a number of organizations here, Venco, Shift, Electra, that already give you devices that you are able to use to look into the supply side of the energy before consumption, and then immediately identify where there are gaps, right? So someone spoke about ATC and C losses, that's aggregate, technical, commercial,
And collection losses.
commercial losses. There's also, other types of challenges in the distribution of energy within our communities that many of us are blind to. And unfortunately, a lot of us are veterans in facilities management, but we haven't caught up in that particular area and we suffer for it, right? So data is very key in being able to monitor the consumption end, but also the supply end, and being able to then use that to identify the gaps and bridge that divide. Now, many of us calculate tariffs, maybe at quarterly or on an annual basis even, without the realization that, for example, our communities have common costs, right? So you all have water pumps, water treatment plants, street lights, and all of those things. But when you're calculating your tariffs, you are never really conscious of the fact that somebody has to pay for those common area costs, right? So you calculate your tariffs and you charge that directly to the customer, but you're forgetting that you should apply that same tariff to the consumption of your common areas and then divide it equally across everybody. So for the consumers amongst us, as difficult as it may sound, there's another component to the cost of energy that you need to pay, which is a fixed charge, right? Which is your common area costs spread across all the customers equally. Whether you went on vacation, whether you traveled, whether you are not at home, and then it's fixed because that's a sunk cost. You understand, right? I think that this is also a good place to talk about, we hear a lot. I think even one of the moderators today, Duru Bond, very popular, fellow in this space, talking about how he was specifically looking for communities where he can use solar and kind of be technically off-grid. One of the things that we need to realize when it comes to living in a community is that it requires a certain cultural change. You are no longer the complete master of your own fate, because you have to blend in the requirements and the needs of all the other people. And the reason why even getting solar in is not going to stop you from paying things like communal and fixed costs is because those costs have been sunk already. And when the cost is sunk, so if you bought into a community because it had a backup generator, and then you decide it's a wise idea to get solar, which is good, right? But it does not then remove you from the need to contribute your own portion of the amortized cost of the generator, because it's there already. You get? So those are the kind of things that we need to be aware of, and that the data that we get from monitoring the production of the generator and the grid, right, makes very clear and stark to us. Because when we are seeing that cost coming up, right, we need to kind of imagine who is going to bear it, right? So, and then there's one more thing around how data is really impactful, especially when it relates to the sizing of the generating capacity in our communities. So the fact that, for example, maybe we're in a 20-unit community or in a 100-unit community does not mean that the load the consumption of energy is constant for that community. So you'll be surprised that even for a relatively small community, there are times when it spikes. And it is those spikes that actually determine what your generating capacity should be or what your energy mix should be, right? So it might then necessitate that at certain times of the day, you have to have a 350 kVA generator, and at other times of the day, you probably want to go down to a 200 kVA. And that decision to buy that 200 kVA can have a material impact on your ongoing cost, because it means the difference between drinking 20 liters of diesel an hour and 12 liters of diesel an hour. So again, these are things that, you know, stand out to you once you're measuring the data and it's really visible to you. And again, there's a bunch of technologies that enables you to have that at your fingertips, and we'll be happy to speak to you at the bank. We'll start about them later.
Thank you very much, Udi, and aptly put. And I think he embellishes the point that Anthony has made, which is bring everybody on board, right? So that they know exactly where all those costs are, transparency. And if you do that, you help give trust and ensure that tariff is transparent for all. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I just wanted to commend Chudi about how he explained how energy and power worked, and hope that some people try to understand that those principles, because they are very key.
Julian, just 1 second. We'll come to that on the closing remark, okay? Now, Ugwem, beyond data, right? What do you think is the unlock for estates and communities? Is it just data that is needed for you to ensure that energy is managed efficiently? What exactly can you recommend? Thank you.
Yes, so at Steamaco, our parent company, and Shift Power Solutions, we ultimately believe, and we're on a mission to ensure that every kilowatt hour is visible, traceable, and billable. And so data isn't, you really begin to unlock data or the value behind data when you're able to put action, accountability, and also trust when you can intersect those concepts. And on the accountability side, what we see in the value of data going beyond just setting tariff plans, speaking to the lending point, we've actually been brought in at the early stages of projects when lenders are mandating that developers, project developers, have a technology that they've reviewed that will ensure financial sustainability and that there's a mechanism for them to recover their costs. So we look at ourselves as a tool for revenue assurance. And so I think that's one way we in the technology space can get upstream onto the greenfield side of things, is by working with the lenders to ensure that their cost and the facility managers or the developers' costs can indeed be recovered. And that's one element where data and the tools can be valuable beyond just the tariff management. Additionally, we've already talked about cost-reflective unit economics, but I'll highlight again that one of the biggest things we see, and Chude's already mentioned this, is on technical and commercial losses, as well as other operating costs that are less tangible. So, you know, whether I use a kilowatt hour from the DISCO or not, there's a cost associated with maintaining and keeping that infrastructure up and running. And so whether we're out of country, in my estate, people say, oh, I'm out of town, I'm out of country for 3-4 months. Why should I be paying this charge or this service charge? Because even if that generator is running on idle, there's a cost associated with that, even beyond the common areas, et cetera. Then the data also is key in really, this is one of our key areas of innovation, is loss and theft detection and mitigating that. Really starting to use, in this day and age, AI to look at consumer behavior and to be able to detect not just in the energy flows, but even in payment activity, where we see abnormalities that should be followed up on. Not all of it is misbehavior. Sometimes there's actually, you know, engineering and technical issues, but the goal is to be able to detect that proactively. We don't want to wait until we're trying to figure out why the bill is this and we've only collected that. And so again, the data that we have is now going beyond what's my credit balance on my meter and what tariff should I charge. It's how can we ensure that, again, we're pricing in a cost reflective manner. I think the last point I want to emphasize is something that was part of the motivation of, for our company moving into this space. It was actually a personal experience of some of my management, walking into my building and seeing someone, berating the receptionist to reactivate his meter. And really, she's not the one, she's not the financial controller, she's not the one to dictate whether there was a discrepancy or not. And it became such a breakdown in the relationship between the stakeholders, between the facility manager, the consumers, and the tenants, as well as, even the technicians and the staff in the community. And because our historical business was working with IPPs and power providers, we understood the challenges they were facing. But as consumers and as a resident, I also empathized with my fellow resident who was frustrated about his meter situation. And we recognized that technology and data was going to start building the bridge of trust between the two. And so with our platform and with several other technologies, including Venco's that we've seen, you're seeing us pioneering visibility. Our customers get to see their usage in real time. So if you think your meter is running fast, you can open an app and you can shut down all your ACs and lights and watch that rate drop. And so you can say, this is what I'm using. And I can see where if my credit goes to zero, I believe that it's because of the energy that I use. I'm not going to wait till the end of the month when I'm saying, why did I pay this much? And I'm going to now debate with my FM. And so the more we can get proactive in building the visibility and the trust, you're not only using that as a tool for revenue assurance for the facility manager or the power provider, but you're empowering consumers. And one of the best cases that I saw is when the diesel subsidy was removed and we saw the prices jump up, our users were able to say, especially our customers in dual tariff communities, were able to actually see get an alert in the app that power has switched and actually make a choice as to whether to change their course of behavior. Okay, now we won't be using the ACs, or we'll shift our behavior to use heavy loads at a later time. And that empowers consumers and allows them to feel, again, that they're coming to the table, that they're part of the decision-making and part of the conversation.
Thank you very, very much. So in essence, personal accountability is key. That's actually one takeaway. So, and the tools are there for us to ensure that we maintain personal accountability. So for what we're using, we're able to manage efficiently what we are consuming. Thank you very much for your insights. And that brings us to the close of the conversation. And I would like to throw it open to the audience. So my method is to actually get one or two members in the audience to give their takeaway, and another one person or two persons to ask questions. So MC, questions.
Do we have questions? Okay, we're only going to be taking 2 questions, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yoma remains my name. What I want to find out is there's an estate that I know that after the diesel hike, they never ran the generator till date, and the generator is sitting down there pretty. There's a back and forth on the tariff. We try to step in to stir things, and there's this huge dichotomy between people who are willing to pay the new tariff, but the greater majority are the people who do not want to pay the tariff. And the once upon a time estate that they didn't want to use small gens and the likes, now you have the whole the whole estate littered with little small generator. What would you propose? How do you turn this into a win, right, for estates who may be dealing with things like this? And I particularly like the fact that beyond counting what comes out from the individual units, if you have a bulk meter, you get to find out what's the total unit. And if you do that marriage, is it okay to just, what we have consumed from individual units is X, what is in the meter is Y. The difference is we're going to share it across all tenants, whether you are in a 1-bed, studio apartment, 2, 3, or 4. So I would like you to address that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One more question. Who will take the first one?
All right, thank you very much. This is a very interesting session. I want to speak, or I want to ask questions in respect of energy theft. Because when you talk about energy tariff management, then we have to look at that aspect of energy theft. I like the way Mr. Shudu came and told us about taking measurement of the source energy and what you are consuming, and there's a shortfall. So as panelists, how do you advise through using data or technology to address the issue of theft as regards to energy tariff management? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. The first question, I'll start from the last part of the question where you said, do we now divide the consumption? Like if there's a difference in the energy usage, do you divide it among all the residents equally? That's very wrong to do. You should not do that. You should divide, whenever there's a shortfall, you should calculate and divide based on their consumption. So that means at that particular month, you have sold energy lower than the amount you're supposed to sell it. That's why I said energy tariff is dynamic. So for the estates also you mentioned, Trudy has also mentioned you need to be able to measure what is coming as aggregate from all the units and what is also coming in. So that's one aspect there. The other aspect is for you to also bring stakeholders together. It's not also good in estates that everybody should have a say. What I mean is they should have people that are representing them, right? You should have committees. You should have people that are representing them. So I mean ESCOs, right? So that you have some, you have people you will deal with, and you communicate based on what you found out and say, okay, this is what the tariff should be. Then we cascade it to the other members of the estate. I think that's one of the way you can deal with it. So I said three things. You have ESCOs in that kind of community. Also, shortfalls should not be shared equally. You should calculate it based on consumption, and you should also use the approach to they talked about both input and outputs being the same. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Take energy tips.
Yes. On the shortfall, kind of also piggybacking on what he just said, but what we've done with some of the communities we work with, there is a factor, a ratio that is expected for technical losses from the bulk meter to the consumers. This is where the data-driven approach comes in. The tariff should actually account for that. Commercial losses or losses because people aren't paying or because there's some type of bypassing shouldn't actually reasonably be spread, right? I mean, we have to figure out ways to recover that. But the best way to address with the standard losses would be to, whatever tariff you have, adjust it by the factor that's a standard loss. The technical efficiency losses are coming through. The reason why that's also valuable is then if you do see a mismatch between what the residents have consumed and the bulk meter, you know it's likely coming from user behavior or some type of bypassing. It's not typical efficiency or losses that you would see just by the nature of these electrons moving downstream. So one way to do it is, and again, instead of splitting that discrepancy, is let's get closer to a more cost reflective and accurate tariff by putting that factor on the rate per kilowatt hour. And then for the question regarding an estate where they haven't used a generator because there's a split between those who will accept the higher rates and not, I think the options really come down to we are either going to invest in dual tariff meter infrastructure, or users will have to accept that the generator may begin to run, and they have the means to, again, depending on the meter technology deployed, to not consume when the generator is up and running. But there has to be a choice there, and I think that's where the stakeholders coming into play and voting would address that.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much, my panelists. I've been informed our time is fast spent, so my apologies for not taking your closing remarks. But what I would say is that the key takeaway from this panel is that data is key for you to manage your tariff efficiently. Technology is actually very critical. Artificial intelligence to help look at customer behavior and resident behavior is also key. And with all this tool, like we've seen at the stand, there are a lot of persons that actually provide us some services, and they can be actually used for you to manage your energy efficiently. So thank you once again, my panelists, and have a great day.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for every member of this panel session. Please put your hands together for them as they take the photograph. And immediately after this photography session, please, we would like you to step outside for a short interview on the red carpet. Thank you very much. Once again, please put your hands together for them.